week's episode of Samurai Jack. Jack journeys to the very depths of his soul to confront his inner demons and reclaim his magic sword. And Ashi decides to fight against an evil army of orcs and is confronted by her darkest fears, her very own mother. All that and more in this week's incredibly awesome episode of Samurai Jack. This week's episode of Samurai Jack has the cutest little rams in the world that Jack ends up slaughtering in an extreme bloody rage. This was an episode that, to me, like, compared to the last couple, starts to feel a little bit more like the classic series, especially when we had this fantastic flashback at the beginning of the episode revealing why Jack actually lost his sword. He's going on this journey to this mountain which supposedly has a time portal, and he makes it to the top as he's being followed by these adorable, cute little rams. And right as he jumps into the portal, Aku just grabs him, pulls him right out, and manages to transform these rams into these big, freaky, monstrous versions of himself that Jack is forced to fight against. And he actually ends up killing a lot of them. The thing is, when he actually ends up killing them, they revert back to their original forms, which are super fluffy and adorable. And this completely fucks with his head. This is like the turning point for his character. And as this is going on, he loses his sword, which ends up falling into this chasm, and he no longer is able to find it. Flash forward 50 years later, and this is where we are, as Jack and Ashi arrive back to this place so that he can find his sword. And with the help of a ridiculously large bird, they fly down into the cavern, and they find nothing. No sword, no magic, nothing but ram skulls. And that's when they return, and Jack realizes the only way that he's going to be able to get his sword back is to do it by a very different means. He's going to have to go through some extreme meditation and go into his inner deepest self and actually find it, which leads to a lot of beautiful imagery. Juxtaposed to that, we have this incredibly awesome action sequence where this massive army of orcs arrive to kill Samurai Jack, and Ashi is forced to fight against all of them in an extremely brutal, hilarious, and extremely bloody action scene. I really loved this sequence, especially because at first it seemed like they were going just a little too over the top with it in terms of the violence, but as soon as things start to get a little too crazy, they manage to cut back to the things that are going on with Jack. And it's so extreme that it just borders on funny. Like, you could almost put a record scratch in every single time they transition between these two scenes, because Ashi is just annihilating these guys, throwing them onto their spears, breaking them all with her bare hands, and using all of their weapons against them. And it's just so bloody and over the top, to the point where you just can't help but want to laugh a little bit. And of course, she completely annihilates all of them. But she meets one more enemy who is trying to kill Jack personally, and that is her mother, the High Priestess of the Order of Aku. And we finally get a confrontation between her and Ashi. Now, what I really love about this sequence is that you have these two characters who are desperately trying to reclaim themselves in very different ways, with Jack overcoming his inner demons and trying to get his sword back, and Ashi realizing all of the evil that she's done and what she's been forced to believe, and her ultimate evil is right in front of her, the one that's actually made her do all of these terrible things. And the action sequence between these two characters is just great. It's super well animated, and also ends in a shockingly bloody moment with the High Priestess getting ready to kill Jack, and she ends up picking up this arrow, and Ashi just throws it right through her, impaling her as she falls over into the abyss. It is just thrilling, to say the least. And while all of this is going on, Jack is tasked with making tea. There's a sequence where he gets on this raft in the middle of this ocean, which just goes on for days and nights, when suddenly he comes up to this, like, Japanese-looking gate, and he meets this old wise monk who asks him to make some tea. And we get to see Jack going through this entire ceremony of making tea, and he ends up serving it to the monk, and the monk doesn't like it. To him, it's terrible. There is no balance. And this is when Jack's inner self finally comes out. And it's basically a manifestation of all of his anger and frustration. And Jack is finally able to get rid of this, banish it from his soul, and that allows him to reclaim his sword, which is given back to him by these three gods, some of which have already made an appearance in the series, but to finally see them all here, freaking Ra and freaking Odin and Vishnu. They all just look so damn cool, and they shoot these beams from their eyes and end up blasting Jack at point-blank range, which not only gives him his sword back, but also his original appearance with the white robes. He returns super triumphant, and the only thing on his mind is taking down Aku. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Samurai Jack? I think all the action scenes with Ashi speak for themselves. They're super thrilling and they're super brutal. I especially love some of the imagery that's used in it, like when she's actually surrounded by all of the orcs. You get to see that her silhouette still has the same hair design that she had when she was evil, and I think this is a perfect representation of her just going complete berserker and rage on these orcs. It's a fantastic moment, and I didn't expect to see the High Priestess in this episode, and getting to see her confrontation with Ashi was really fantastic, especially the personal growth of that character. And then, of course, there's Jack, who, despite the fact doesn't really have to go through any, like, really dangerous shit this week, had a very interesting journey and battle with himself, and I thought that was pretty cool. Especially love that they're still using sort of the imagery, which has always been sort of the background of Jack, taking a lot of inspiration from Japanese lore, meeting this monk, making tea. It was a really great moment, and I still love the look of inner Jack, his frustration and evil, how twisted and, like, deformed he looks, which is a great representation of his actual psyche at that time. It's something that's been used in the previous episodes, but done to, I think, perfect effect in this one, especially when Jack sees the light and actually, like, blinds him with this glowing light from his eyes. It's a really fantastic moment, especially getting to see him see the gods and get the sword back. It actually sent, like, a huge shiver down my spine while I was watching that, and I was just like, man, the atmosphere in this episode is just on point. I especially love just the journey, getting to see him actually go before he meets this monk, just all of the imagery of him meditating and seeing the sky and space behind him, floating and getting to see all of these, like, various, like, places that he were going to. They were varied and they were beautiful the entire time, and like the previous episodes of the series, damn near every frame is something that you could actually, like, put on your wall. It just looks so damn cool. And then there's the final scene, which just pumped me up so much. No hesitation. We're going after Aku. Whatcha! Samurai Jack! It was just great. Another thing that I thought was really cool was just getting to see a classic scene, like at the beginning, especially with Aku. It really did feel like one of the old episodes of the series, and I can't wait to see what they're going to do with this actual finale, how he's actually going to take him down, and how Ashi is actually going to be involved, as the relationship between Jack and Ashi is now starting to become a little more interesting and juicy, if you know what I mean. Especially because Ashi is a little more interested in Jack when she sees his brand new clean-cut form, and you can almost start to see maybe there's a little bit of a relationship that is actually building between these characters. It's still hard to say if it's more of like a father-daughter thing, or if it actually is going to be a loving relationship, but I can't wait to see more of it. And the more I see of Ashi, the more I realize there's a good chance that she's probably going to die in this series. And when that happens, we're going to have to see if Jack is going to be able to keep his composure, or maybe it's going to be another twist altogether where Jack is the one who's going to die, and it's going to be up to Ashi to actually take up the mantle of the samurai and take down Aku. There's so many possibilities for what they're going to do with the rest of the series, and we still have a couple more to go, so let's just sort of relish in that and enjoy these episodes. This one right here was great, filled with some amazing, beautiful imagery, and a great journey for Jack to finally return to his true self. It was a long time coming. And while I do think that the sort of Road Warrior-esque Jack was a little more badass in the first half of this season, it is really cool to see the classic version of the samurai return. So, 5 out of 5 from me. Check it out, Samurai Jack fans. I know you already have. If any of you did watch the episode, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comments section below. What did you think of Jack's personal journey to get his sword back? What about Ashi fighting against an army of orcs and the High Priestess? What do you hope to see from the final season of Samurai Jack? Thank you guys for watching this review. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for all things Samurai Jack related, as well as a ton of other anime reviews. Make sure to leave me a comment telling me what you thought about this week's episode. I'm always down for a good conversation with you guys. And of course, if you liked this video, hit the like button and give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. I'll see you guys next time. And as always, stay dandy, baby.